My name is Jack Holmes. I come from the United Kingdom, England. I've come to Rojava as a volunteer to fight with the YPG against Daesh, Islamic State. I want to help the Kurds in their battle and help them against oppression from everyone.
جاک هولمز جوانێکی ji bajarê Pûleyê Brîtanyayê di îjdeyê çileya sala 1993 de iştayîk bûye. Jack berî were Sûrî ew karê dîkorasyon dikir. Jack di sala 2015 de dema berê xwe da Rojava temenê wî 22 salî bû. Tu tecrûbeyên wî yê leşkerî tunebûn. Ew yek ji şervanên Brîtanî bû ku herî demdirêj şerê li dijî Daişê meşandiye.
Obviously, Jack was one of the first British internationalists that I even read about. So I'd read about him on the in the newspapers and stuff. Seen a couple of his YouTube videos. And yeah, he was probably at the time the most high-profile British volunteer. He always used to do ask and answer things on Reddit and stuff.
I actually never knew a lot about his background, and he never spoke to me a lot about it. Other than tiny little personal details of his life, but not this is what I did or this is who I was. Obviously he wasn't coming from, say, the International Workers of the World. He wasn't coming from the Labour Party. He wasn't coming from an organizing background. But he never spoke to me a lot about his life. Most of the stories I heard were from his time in Rojava, from his time in this region.
His life before Rojava, I got into a little bit. Basically, I learned about Jack Holmes' life from Google, because I remember he would constantly come up in Yuppie media, and even when we were in Raqqa, when we get the chance to get internet, there was something in The Guardian about him, which I often read normally before, and I was like, oh, Jack Holmes is in The Guardian, wow. And I learned he was just described as an IT worker. I learned a few other, I know he liked to have a good time, which I always respected, and I think a lot of us respected. In his personal life, he liked to take it easy, you know what I mean? So that's the type of person, he's the type of person you definitely want to hang out with back in the, in the normal world outside of the Rojava or outside of Kurdistan. If you were back in Europe or something like that, you'd hang out, be up for, if you won, you'd want to go out and have a few pints with, or probably be more likely to stay at home and play a PlayStation with, and do something else. I don't know, melt into the couch.
Gava ku ew hat Sûriyayê, Holmes navê Kurdî şoreş Amanos li xwe kir. Wateya peyva şoreş di zimanê Kurdî de şoreş e. Di hevpeyvîneka Facebookê de di çarê cotmeha sala 2017 Holmes sedema hatina xwe ya Sûriyayê anî ziman. O got ji ber ku ez ji dîtina tiştên ku li Sûriyayê diqewimin westiyam û hem jî alîkariya hemwelatiyên Sûrî bikim.
In the case of Sheikh Shoresh, I don't know so much about who he was actually. I just know that he was from UK, but as he said himself, he was not so much political before, not militant or anything. He just mainly came for the reason of this consensual anti-ISIS fight, basically. But once being here, being in contact and both with YPG and with leftist internationals, he became more leftist.
Everyone knew him as Jack Holmes, instead of shoresh, like. So it was strange that you would hear about an international fighting with Yepige that was going by their actual government name.
So yeah, I started like messaging Jack a lot on like Instagram and Reddit and stuff, and I was really like paranoid about coming here. So I was asking him what sorts of things I could bring over, that kind of thing, what daily life was like, what combat was like. Yeah, obviously Jack, when he first came here, I got a lot of mutual friends with him now. So a lot of the people that I'm really good friends with now, they were really good friends with him. And they told me a lot about when he first got here, how, he wasn't really, military, but he picked things up very quickly, and he was always like eager to learn, and everybody like looked at him as like a younger brother because he was quite young. Everybody says that he grew up during his time here. So yeah, as I say, I was just messaging him for months just to try and get an idea of what life in the Yepige was like. And even over like the time that I'd been messaging Jack, you could see like how his mind had changed. Obviously, when I first started messaging him, he was all about like, yeah, like I'm like a sniper sort of a thing. Like I like to fight, da 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 da. And he went from that to like, man, so many of my friends have like been killed here, and like this revolution's gonna like stall, or like it could possibly even fail if like the Turkish army come in or something. So that was always at the back of his mind when I was speaking to him, and that's one of the things that he always used to like warn me about. So I think in a way he was like not trying to put me off, but trying to be real with me and say, look, man, this is like more likely than not going to be either the end of your life, or you're going to end up being on like an opposing side to like a country that our country's allied with, so you could get into a lot of trouble. And then I always asked him what it was like for like friends to die, like how do you deal with it? And I remember like once he told me that like you don't deal with it, and I never understood it at the time. I thought like, what's he going on about? His exact words were something like, you do all your mourning when you get home, you don't get time to mourn whilst you're here. And it never made sense to me at the time. I was just like, how can you like, not mourn your friends that die? And then, like, obviously when I came here and some of my friends started to die, then you realise that you just got to get on with it, and like there's time to mourn after. So yeah, Jack gave me a lot of really good advice.
So I arrived in Rojava in 2016, in fall of 2016, and at that time, the International Academy was kind of a hub. So whenever internationals were transferring somewhere, they would often come back to the academy before they would go somewhere else. At that time, if I'm not mistaken, Jack was on his third tour. This was his third time in Rojava. And so he was already very experienced, and he was one of those people that, like, he was already a legend. Like, his name really preceded him in many different aspects, as being a kind person, as being a great fighter, as being very intuitive. And so when I met him for the first time, of course I'm coming here for the first time in Rojava, I'm not really knowing what to expect. But my first impression of him was just that he exuded this confidence. Like, he was completely in his element. He was completely comfortable where he was. His Kurdish language that I saw him speaking was really excellent.
Yeah, that night that I met him at the academy, that'll always stick with me, because everybody was just absolutely like fascinated with him. And I don't know, he didn't seem like he was like judging anybody. Like, the newer friends that were just waiting to start their class, all of them were like fascinated with him, like almost to the point of like infatuation. They were all like surrounding him, like listening to his advice, and he was like really encouraging to the newer friends, like, don't be scared, do this, do that, like, don't do this sort of a thing. And you could just tell that he was somebody that, like, commanded respect. He was like just a natural leader, and a really good-hearted, funny person. And obviously when I first started hearing about him, seeing like his interviews on like the media or whatever, he just looked like a young kid. But obviously at this point he was a man. Like, he looked like a man. He had like long hair, he had his beard, like. So yeah, when people say that Jack Holmes did his growing up in Rojava, you can completely see that. But as I say, like, I met him a couple of times here, and then it's mainly just speaking to him on social media. But
he was never overtly like especially being in Artabor, which everyone was so like every chance they got to express which precise like political background they came from, you know, like Shahid, Jack. Jack was always like he was never just like talking about like, well, the Marxist-Leninists, I read the book of the Lenin or some really obscure thing from like 1892, you know what I mean, and like get in some really highbrow, pretentious, theoretical debate. Like he was just, I mean, I think he just loved the fight, and he loved what this was about, and I think in a way we could relate in the sense that like I can't get into a high-level theoretical debate about all this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know who half the great like revolutionary political leaders are, and like, maybe he didn't either. But the two of us, we were up for the fight, and like we both really loved what was happening here and the ideas of this movement in our own ways, you know. And that was one thing that was really nice about Jack, was that he wasn't pretentious, really easy to be around.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the way I understand it, and from what my good friends that were good friends with him say, he was like apolitical. Like he wasn't really political at all. Like he was just like a normal, like British guy. I think a lot of British people, especially in like our age range, feel like very disassociated from politics. They don't feel like part of the political system. So, like growing up in Britain, it seems like there's a concerted effort to like prevent people from getting involved in politics and to keep politics like one-sided in terms of like social class, and to say like, you know, like working class or like lower middle class people shouldn't like have any involvement whatsoever in politics. So you grow up thinking that, and you don't really like take an interest for the most part. And then yeah, obviously he'd been coming here for like 3, 4, 5 years. And over the time, he'd been like learning the language a lot. So I think the longer that he spent time here, the more he like in touch with the culture and in touch with the ideology he got. So I've noticed this about some of the friends that I know, and I'm certain that this can be applied to Jack. Like a lot of friends, they turn up here and they're like shocked that women are like the forefront of like this revolution, and it absolutely blows people's minds, because coming from like a patriarchal society that thinks it's equal and like purports that it's equal, you think, oh yeah, women are equal, and then when you come here, you're like, well, okay, maybe women in our country aren't equal, and they're blown away by like what women can do here. So, you know, I beg anybody to try and find another revolution that's centred entirely on women, and another fighting force that's comprised entirely of women in the whole world. There isn't one that I can think of. Maybe like some like little groups on smaller scales, but obviously without the women here, then like none of this would even have happened. This is about like liberating women, and everything else is a consequence to that. And Jack even like sent this to me in a message once, and he was the first person to say this to me about like Stêrk Apo. So he said that in the ideology you'll learn that without the liberation of women, like society can't be free. And he said that after we liberate women, then all of our freedoms naturally follow. And I was like, what's he going on about, kind of a thing? Like women are free. Like even I came here with like a patriarchal mindset, even though I would have said like I was a leftist and I agreed with women's rights. Like patriarchy is something that's like subconsciously ingrained into everybody that comes from like a Western culture. So yeah, I think even without meaning to sound political, a lot of the time he sounded political. So you can definitely see how his mindset changed as well.
So today is the 26th of September, and Daesh attacked behind our lines in Raqqa in the morning. They came from outside Raqqa. With 3 or 4 trucks full of guys, full of shit, and they managed to get pretty far.
ژاک di derbarê tevlîbûna xwe ya şerê li dijî Daişê de pir bi eşkere bû û di medyaya nevnetewî de pir bi rêkûpêk derbarê şervanên biyaniyê ku şerê li dijî Daişê bi pêşengtiya Kurda tê meşandin.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I don't know his mindset that he was going into this, but you know, there are some internationals that do come here for, I don't want to say they come here for attention, that sounds bad, but I think that there are some people obviously that come here and they make Rojava their personality, and they make these live streams and these things, and it's all about the spotlights on them. But you know, just the impression that I always got with Jack is that he was really wanting people to see what the experience was like, what the war was like, that it wasn't this attention this attention-seeking type of behavior. Like, he genuinely wanted people to know how he was doing. He wanted the people that he loved to know how he was doing, and he wanted people to see the reality of the place. I mean, he was the international I met that probably had one of the best Kurdish-speaking skills that I'd seen among internationals, and you know, this is something not to be taken lightly. This means that, you know, you're obviously dedicated to the cause here, and it's not just something. This isn't a vacation for you. This isn't a trip for you. This is something that you really deeply care about.
Yeah, like, I think he did a lot of things, especially in our country, for the cause. Perhaps even sometimes without even meaning to. Like, I wouldn't have even been aware that me as a British person could join a like leftist group, like fighting against fascism, if it wasn't for people like Jack. If you know, if they weren't willing to take the risks and make themselves known, then I think there'd be a complete lack of awareness in like a lot of countries. So I think he's probably like one of the driving forces between like the love for Rojava, especially amongst British people.
Di şerê Reqa de wî fermandariya yek çeperê kir ji dilxwaz û şervanên navnetewî ji Spanya, dewletên Yekbûyî û Almanya pêk dihat.
I mean, I do know that he was sniping with an M16, which is sniping here, you know. Like, yeah, I remember he had the M16, he had the scope, he had everything, and he was talked about as a sniper and a fairly competent sniper in the operations within the city.
We had heard the legend, and actually the first time I met Jack Holmes was on an operation, my very first operation in Raqqa, and it was the first daytime operation that they decided to do during the campaign, because previously they had been doing all the operations at night. And we had come up on some sleeping Daesh and basically surprised them. And we were engaging the enemy, as they say. There was a bit of a crossfire going on, an exchange of fire. And suddenly, from behind us, there's like two guys just come, two internationals, clearly international, come running. And clearly yipping, because they had some, you could see like the yellow patches, and like, but they looked kind of like Daesh in a way, because like the way Shahid Shoresh had his beard was kind of like, there was kind of like, for a second when I saw him, I was like, you know, explicative word, you know, shit. But then I realized quickly they were with us. And he's like, "Hey, how's it doing?" As he's running by, hey, how's it going, man? And I'm like, fine, you? And he's like, yeah, great. And he runs straight into the fire, runs around the corner and disappears, and we just hear shooting from his M16. And that was the first time I met Jack Holmes. Yeah, he just ran straight into the battle, like, without hesitation. And this place was covered in mines. I mean, like, we'd been taking hours moving carefully, checking, controlling everything, using the futility bombs to clear this. You know, we're like terrified because it's just all rubble. And Daesh had put mines everywhere. And the guys were just running. I've never seen someone in Raqqa run through an unchecked area, uncontrolled area, straight into fire, disappeared around the corner, just the two of them. And I think it was Spanish Arguesh at the same time. And yeah, so that was my introduction. I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I understand why everybody calls it's like the legend of Jack Holmes, you know.
When I met him, like, it was during the Raqqa front line, actually. Like, at the beginning of Raqqa front line, like the city itself, I mean, and not the huge front line, the city itself, when we were like going to enter in the city, so during, I think, June, July, basically, 2017. This is the time when I was back And I was talking with him, I remember, and he was like, oh yes, like we didn't meet each other yet, we just had like common comrades. And I was like, oh yes, the comrades told me they were spending time with you, I'm coming soon, and all this stuff, like I hope I will meet you soon. And finally, yes, we met in August 2017 when I came back into AFB. At the time, like the battalion had already started to help in the operations to take like some of the external suburbs of the city. And very often, like in our operations, we were missing cover basically. We had only like just two or three people able to make good sniping for all our units, and that's why very often like we were requesting from Sheikh Shoresh that he would also help us because he was a very good sniper. He was also a very good Kurdish speaker. Like he was very useful as a soldier on a combat unit, and so very often like him and his group of 3 to 4 comrades, internationals, were coming with us AFB to help us or to cover us, or sometimes coming in our building when we were taking a new position within the Daesh territory in the city center. So coming to help us to defend the building against like counter-offensive of Daesh. So it was very appreciated.
He would visit our place often, especially towards the end of the liberation campaign of Raqqa. And we'd sit around and talk, and he'd talk about which groups he'd work with custody guys he worked with, if he had been with the Americans, other internationals, basically like trying to figure out like, oh, who do you know that's decent, like, yeah, they're pretty good, they're pretty solid. If you go on an operation with them, you don't worry about it. They do a good job. Or there's a custody commander named this guy. He looks like this. You go with them, they're really good. Or if there's these other guys, if you're on a mission, and just like watch your back because they're not disciplined at all. And he was always bringing us MREs. Meals ready to eat from the U.S. Special Forces, because he had a good relationship with them. And I think he got his, if I'm not mistaken, he got his rifle from the U.S. Special Forces, because he had like this like camouflaged M4 or M6, like M4 or M16 with a silencer on it and like an ACOG. It was all decked out, like fully tactical, and like full camouflage and everything, even like the Muslim sort of material around it. And apparently he got it as a gift from the American Special Forces. But yeah, he was always at our point. We got on pretty well because we had many points that were close by and inside the city, and like he was always welcome over at our place, and he knew we had a more Spartan sometimes existence because of us being ideological. So, like as opposed to Yepige Enternasyonal, where they pooled their money and like would have like all kinds of like nice stuff. Like they would go out and buy a bunch of taka and like snacks and stuff like that, and we'd just have what logistics gave us. Like, that's it. And like a few basic things, like if we needed anything. So, and he was good crack though. Like he was good fun. Like, he'd sit around and we'd just have chat and have a good laugh. Like he was a funny guy, really funny guy, really sharp sense of humor.
Well, I mean, the impression I got too was that he was at the front. He was at the front even before the Raqqa operation was starting. So it was these like village clearing kind of operations that started from Ainisa, like the Wrath of Euphrates operation that started from Ainisa and then sort of went out down towards Raqqa. I was under the impression that he was at the front at that time. I might be mistaken, but that was what I thought.
And actually, like on an operation, they would do Overwatch, Like, so we'd be going out clearing the buildings around on the streets, and they'd be up top covering us while we do the operations. The few operations I went on with him, and it was really good to know that he was up there, because he was so quick to fire. I mean, like, he was letting loose anything, any window, any curtain that moved, he'd put a hole in it, you know. So
I think he's one of the best friends that IFB ever had during Raqqa time. For example, like because of political positions, let's say, and it built a little bit, let's say, can I say, the very classic Marxist approach of some of our comrades from the Turkish left. We are not able to get too much equipment from the Americans in Raqqa. So we were just like asking to Sheikh Shoresh, actually even without asking, he was just doing it. Like he was going to Americans who were like very fond of him because he was this cool dude, you know, like who was famous and was a very good sniper. He was just going to them, taking as much ammunition as he could, also taking like claymores, explosive weapons, and what we call the MRE, so the meals ready to eat, basically like the ready food from the American army. And he was just like bringing it to us, like, and like, yeah, we got so many stuff from him. So yes, he was like, can I say, like Italian political friend, you know what I mean? Like maybe not very deep in theory, but very interested like about like making friendship with political people.
But yeah, I was lucky enough to meet him a couple of times when I came to Rojava. So one of the times I was trying to change unit. Every time you change unit, you have to go back to the academy and get like a note and then go back. And it was just after like the liberation of Raqqa. He like wanted to go home, but the friends told him, "Look, man, it's gonna be like a couple of weeks before we can get you across the border." So he said, "Oh, no problem. Like I'll just go back to Raqqa and like help out there for like another couple of weeks."
Actually, we spent time with him like the day before he fell shit. Like he spent all the afternoon, evening, and night with us. We invited him like to make dinner because it was like the day when Daesh officially like surrendered and left the city. In when was it? October, I would say probably. The end of October, yes. So he came this day. We make a big morale. IFB and his units, like of 3-4 people, snipers. Also some like evals were coming like to make the party morale with us, let's say. And yes, like he was saying, okay, now that this war is finished, like you have any idea, guys, of a new war we can go to fight in? Like, is there not only like leftist war like across the world that we can take part in? Like, isn't there like some guerrillas in Africa that we can go like to support, or like, no, don't you know, like any armed force like with like socialist background that could need some of our assistance? Like he really said it like this. So like he was very sincere about the fact that he loved like to fight, but he wanted to fight for a just struggle. So at the end of the day, like I mean, like what is the most political involvement? Like is it to be like a very good theoretician, you know, like ideologue, basically, you say ideologue, ideologist, and to be like on your sofa reading a book all the day and like just like having this kind of, how can I say, self-contentment maybe of like, oh, look, I am so radical but not doing anything in practice, or being maybe like not very deep politically, but at least having the minimum, can I say, like analysis of socialist war and counter-revolution threats, and being able to involve like with supporting, military speaking, these kind of friends. I mean, for me, at the end of the day, like he was more revolutionary in his practice than like 90% of the so-called militants that I know across Europe. So these kind of things. And yeah, we had this discussion the last day. Like, we were discussing, oh, next time, like where do we meet each other? Like, will it be like in Chiapas, in Philippines, kind of things? So it was funny. Yes, it was funny. And he was like really like very, very, very friendly with IFB. Like he loved the Turkish comrades and Kurdish comrades. Like talking some things about like Maoism, kind of things. He didn't know so much. He really wanted to know more. So yes, he was a cool dude, really. Like really, like the last night we spent with him, like he was supposed to come back the day after, like for the lunch and the afternoon to make like sniping training with us. But the morning, yeah, he fell shade because of an explosion with a Daesh device.
هولمز د 23 جوتمه ده بماینه که لرقا جمله داعش و هاتبو چاندن شهید کد. او شورشگر ششمین بو کل دیجی داعش شر کرن و شهید کتن.
You know, the reaction when people heard like there was just like total shock, like how the hell he was supposed to be leaving. Like how the hell did he fall? Like no one knew. There's some confusion that like what had happened, and just like after the shock, then the devastation, because everyone loved him. Like, you know, a lot of people say, oh yeah, everybody loved this guy, but really everybody loved Jack Holmes. I don't know anyone that would have said Jack Holmes was an asshole, you know. Like he was totally generous, really easy to be around, always making jokes, like totally like relaxed guy, you know. So like everyone was just like gutted, really gutted. And I think you could see that too, like here at the Shaheed ceremony, and then also the impact in Europe. There were people that flew from all over the world that had met him, you know, like he was like, he left a huge impact of that era of the internationalism inside Rojava.
So when he was Shaheed, I was not here. I had left like a couple months before, and I was in Europe at the time, and I remember hearing about it, and it was like, you know, a couple days after liberation of Raqqa, not even, and it was really heartbreaking because he was always saying, yeah, I'm going to stay till the end, I'm going to stay till the end, I'm going to stay till the end, and also as far as I knew, he was supposed to go home. Relatively close to the time that he fell Shaheed.
So, yes, the day after the Daesh left the city, so it was like very, very hard. Like we didn't even like conceive that someone could die afterwards, as Daesh left the city. But yes, the fact is, Daesh men might have left, but they had also left behind them a lot of explosives and yes, some Hevals. Fell Shaheed on these devices, and this is what happened to him, for example. So I remember, like our international responsible at the time, like a Greek comrade, was very impacted. Like he was really like very close with Shaheed Shoresh, and he was just destroyed. He was like, "What the hell? Like how is it possible?" Like 12 hours after, like even less than 12 hours after, like Daesh left the city, we make morale, and he fell Shaheed. Like how is this even possible?
So, you know, obviously the news was heartbreaking, and I think Jack was one of those people that like everybody knew, and I struggled to find a person or to think of a person with a negative opinion on him. And you know, he was also such a good judge of character, and I think while he was a loner in a lot of ways, he also kind of surrounded himself with a really good circle of people. And so when I found out that he was Shaheed, and many of us were talking to each other, many of the internationals were talking to each other, and I thought, you know, this is an event and a funeral that Jack touched so many people's lives that I think that everyone who knew Jack should have an opportunity to come here and to mourn together and to celebrate his life together. And so I started like a fundraiser, a collective fundraiser, GoFundMe type of thing, in order to raise money for travel expenses and accommodations for people who knew Jack to come and attend his funeral. So I started that, you know, probably within a couple weeks of knowing when his funeral was going to be, and tried to spread that around as much as possible on social media. And we raised enough money to cover almost all of the flights and, you know, train tickets, plane tickets, bus tickets, accommodations for everyone to come to London and then to come to his funeral, which was held later in Bournemouth.
بسادان کس لدورستا بریتانیای جبو مراسم اوغرکرنا هولمز جویان. نزی 500 کس تاوی اندامین مالبات هوال کردین بریتانیا دیو باوی مروین بریتانی یندن کل سوریای مرنه و نزی 3 هوالین بره ین یپگه لسرانسری جیهانه بشتاری ریزگرتنا مراسم هولمز بون. لوم بورنه بشتاری ریزگرتنا مراسم هولمز بون. تابوتاوی بکلیل کن برنگین یکینین پاراستنا گل یپگه و هاتبو پیچاندن. و جمله بردف که فرمیه یپگه نوری محمود بریا سکایبی تفلی مراسمی بو و سرساغی جمالباتا وی رای خواست.
People came, it was dozens of Yepege and Yepege who knew him. They came from America, they came from Europe.
Shaheed, it's strange to say Shaheed Jack, because it's like, you know, Jack Holmes lives forever. There's an expression like Shaheed Shurash lives forever or something like that, and like you see it everywhere. And it's strange particularly with him to say Shaheed, because and I don't know why, because it's as if it's impossible to think of him dying. He's one of those friends that like you think like would survive everything. So if I'm not saying Shaheed in front of it, it's because sometimes it's hard still to process that he's actually dead, you know, because the way when I saw him fight, I mean, he just it's crazy to imagine that he could have fallen Shaheed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whenever there is someone who is Shaheed in this way, that it makes revolutionaries out of people who didn't know that they were, or it makes humanitarians out of people who didn't know that they were, whichever way you want to put that. I mean, I don't know how much his parents knew about Rojava, and you know, I assume that they were relatively informed. You know, I know that he did speak to them regularly. But definitely now, like from seeing them on social media, and then also at the funeral, seeing them talk about, you know, what he did in Rojava and how proud they were of him, it's clear to see that now they've turned into people that are in their own way committed to the cause. And I know that Jack's father has visited here also. Unfortunately, I wasn't there. I didn't get to see him when he came here. But yeah, I think that like the Shaheed's martyrdom leaves a legacy on the whole world, and also the whole world sort of gets to see what Rojava is when this happens. It's like a portal in a way to this place.
And I suppose another thing is like, do you know, I mean, what do you think motivated Jack to come back here? Like, as you said, it was like his third time here, and a lot of people do come back here. Some people, you know, just go once and then they go and then they move on to the next part of their life. But Jack, like many volunteers who come here, they are quite tranced by the place and they come back for more. Why do you think, for Jack particularly, this was so important for him to keep coming back?
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. It made me think this is my third time here. I think this place, there's almost a certain magic to it, and it gets a certain hold on people. And you know, maybe it manifests itself in different ways, and maybe people say that it's the revolution, or maybe people say that it's the culture. But I think that inside of Jack, what there was like a genuine desire and a want to help people. You know, as I said in that sort of joke, he was sort of almost being self-deprecating. Oh, you want to help people, don't you? You know, he was ragging on me, but he was sort of ragging on himself in a way. And yeah, there's a lot of people that they sort of go and they decide, well, that was a phase of my life and I'm not doing that again. And then some people, that it transfixes you. It takes over who you are. It takes over your heart. It takes over your mind. It takes over your body. And there's just no way that once you leave, that you're not coming back.
But yeah, you know, it's just we need more. We need this movement, this revolution, really needs more Jack Holmes. You know, more people, more comrades with that kind of sense of humor, with that like way of being, that aren't so like taking themselves so seriously, that are so like they're so committed. They're great fighters. They're fearless. But they can have a laugh, you know. They're not like pretentious or gatekeepers, or you know, acting as if they get to decide who is part of the Rojava Revolution or not. Like there's people that are here that are giving everything, but in the least pretentious way, you know. We really need more. He was part of a really golden era of Yepege International for sure. And that's the last thing. If we had more like that, I think things would be a lot better if we could have more Jack Holmes.
This cool character was probably like more political in his practice than many people. So we shouldn't only judge people about their theory. I think he's the best example of how people can become political in their practice and can be sincere in their involvement, basically.
So yeah, I think maybe if he'd been lucky enough to go home, then I think he definitely would have continued with the activism, and like he for sure would have been like a stern leftist. He probably would have been like like the forefront of leftist politics for a long time to come. And I think that's the shame with British friends in particular, because it's my country and I want to liberate my people. Like, we've lost so many good like revolutionaries and future politicians, but at the same time, without these people doing the things that they've done here, then other people wouldn't be spurred on to do the same thing. So I think it has like a chain reaction, and I think these people will sort of never be forgotten. So people like Shahid Jack, Shahid Anna, Shahid Ali, these people will never ever be forgotten. They'll have a knock-on effect for generations to come. A lot of people say that like leftist politics in the West is dead, and that like revolutionary theory and revolutionary thinking and thought are completely dead in the West, but like these people are proof that it's not, and these people will spur on the next generation of revolutionaries to do the same thing and to keep fighting and to never accept no for an answer and to always push for it. So yeah, I think one thing that I'd like to make clear about Jack is obviously people have like an internet persona, and then they have like their actual persona, what they're really like. You have to understand as well that when we're in situations like this, sometimes we might say or do things that without like thinking about it, like it's just like an off-the-cuff remark where to us it's not serious, it's just like something that we say as a joke or something that's funny or something that just comes out, but that doesn't like sum up who that person is as a human being, as a person. So yeah, a lot of the friends that come here, even me to an extent, you have like this mal bravado sometimes, but that's not like who any of the people are. The people that come here are like moral people that were willing to die for the freedoms of others, and like that should never be taken away, and people shouldn't like misconstrue things that people have said or done in the past.